Hey YouTube, well it's Wednesday and it's kind of a cold day. I only have my one shirt on, but it's still feeling kind of cold. It was down to 26 this morning and we had snow flurries today already. They're already melted. We had last night, there was a coating of snow everywhere. It's gone already, but we're supposed to have more snow this week. Wanted to make a video. I had gotten a couple of questions from some different people about the size of the lumber and, you know, cutting it on the mill here and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this mill a little bit about, you know, the sizes it needs, what you can't cut on it from the factory, and what you might be able to do to make it so that you can cut the things you want to cut. So hold on and I'll get right back to you here. Okay, so first of all, the regular LT15, which is what this is, this is not the wide. I did not get a trailer for this, and it's not the starter one, but it's the regular LT15, okay? Now this sawmill, when you buy it, not everything you're seeing here. I mean, I put the toe board in and I put these white rollers on there. I changed the rollers on the dogs because they weren't what I wanted. But anyway, this frame here cut somewhere around 17 foot. I think it's 17 foot 4 inches or whatever, and that would be from the saw blade up there all the way to this end where the saw blade would be able to reach. Now, so with that in mind, just think to yourself, okay, this is a lumber mill, okay? We're supposed to be cutting lumber, and I know for myself, and I know there's a lot of other guys out there just like me, we want to be able to use our tools for all kinds of things, not just one thing. The more we can use it for, the more valuable it becomes. Alright, so here's the number one thing. First of all, it's a lumber mill, it's a sawmill. It's made to cut 16 footers, 14 footers, 12 footers, 10 footers, 8 footers. Okay? Those are the regular sizes of lumber in whatever width you can get, up to 12 inches or wider. But those are the regular widths of lengths of lumber, and this sawmill can do that without blinking an eye. It has no problem cutting those lengths of lumber. Okay? But sometimes you'll get something that somebody wants cut special, and maybe, just maybe, it's not going to fit to be cut. Now, let me just give you an example here. First of all, keep in mind that every one of these bunk rails that you see here has holes in it to be able to accept the dog. Alright, so there's a hole over there and there's a hole here, but the dog is over there. Now here's the thing, the dog has got to be between the backstops. So you have a backstop there, and the next backstop is right here. So let's just pick this up and take a look at this for a second. Alright, so the first two backstops, alright, are not where one of the dogs are. So if I wanted to cut, let's say I had a piece of wood here. Now, let me just bear with me. Let's say I had a piece of wood that's that length, 4 foot. Now 4 foot stretches from one bunk rail to the other bunk rail, but how do I dog that? I can't dog it on that first one, okay? So then maybe I might have to come to the second one here. So let's take a look at this. So if you look at the dogs, just bear with me here because I'm trying to move the camera and do measuring. The first one is 24 inches between the outside and outside. The next one's 26. The next one's 36, 24, 26, 36, 24. That would be 26. Okay, so just the way this came from the factory, if I want to cut a 4-foot board, all I have to do is put the 4-footer on this second set of backstops. So in other words, I can use that backstop and this backstop to hold a 4-footer. But it doesn't give you a lot of leeway to play here. Now just hold on. I know you're having a hard time seeing, but I'm having a hard time holding the tape. Alright, so you can see that 4 foot gives you about, maybe 1.5 inches on each side of these backstops. But if you set a 4-footer there, you can push it against the backstops, 4-foot log or a 4-foot board if you want to cut it down again, and then you can dog it in there. Okay, so what that's telling you is the smallest one you can cut 4 foot so far. All right, so that's 4 foot on there. So now let's come down here and look at this next one. So let's say we want to cut a 6-footer. Okay, so we got to look down here, 6 foot. If we put a 6-footer, let me just stretch the tape out here. There we go. Alright, so if we put a 6-footer on there, we can also cut a 6-footer on that first one. Alright, and then any other size up. So in other words, what I'm saying is that the shortest piece of wood that you can cut between these two stops that's going to hold the log up is 4 foot. Okay, now this is from the factory. If you're going to go with something shorter, you're going to have to make some changes. So let's say, again, we're going to cut 4 foot. We just move the log down from the head. You can move it down between these two. That would be number 2 and number 3 backstop, and that can be held in there. And then you can hold, as long as you have the dog between backstops, you can put any size on there you want that'll fit across the bunk. So you can put from 4 all the way to a 16-footer. If all you had was these 2 dogs and that, or these 2 backstops, this one here and that one there, and you had the dog there, you would be able to stop or hold from 4 foot all the way to 16 foot. As long as you just have a place to press between the dogs, or between the backstops, I'm sorry. Alright, so the same thing with down here. This one is basically the same way, and that's because I'm pretty sure the way the factory has sent them, this is how they've basically figured out what's going to happen here. So let me just check this one here real quick. Yeah, so between these 2 backstops, you have this dog, and the smallest log that you can cut is 4 feet. Okay, 4 feet. Now, depending upon how you cut there, it might be a little bit of a hassle. If you're trying to turn the backstops down, then you're gonna lose that 4 feet. Okay, so you're gonna have something against these little metal welded stops to keep you from losing the log. So from the factory, the way this came is you can cut a log as small as 4 feet. Okay, from the factory. Now let's talk a little more about this. Okay guys, so the other thing now, besides the fact that we know we can put a 4-foot log on here and we can cut it by using the stops that are on either side, or using the back stops that are on either side of the dog. That's 4 foot here. Okay, we know we can get 4 foot. Now we couldn't use it here. We can't use 4 foot here because we have no dog to hold it. But we can do it here, or we can do it up here, right in here. Now the other thing they have to remember is you can move these stops. You can move these dogs anywhere you want to. The problem with that is, like from the edge of the dog, it's 16 inches. Okay, so you can fit that even in between here if you wanted to change where your dogs are. So if we put that dog in here, that means that we could cut something, well, if we use these little welded on pieces for stops, and we put the dog here, we could cut something as small as, say, 24 inches. But that means that you have to make a change, okay? And the change might not be a bad thing to do. Like, for instance, if we move this one up one, we could catch anything from, well, we have to be able to come all the way up here. If we move the dog up one here, it really wouldn't help me here because I'm still working with 4 foot. But if I put the dog in here between the narrow bunk rails, the 20-inch distance, then I could cut something 2 foot long, okay, or 3 foot long if I have to. But let's say you don't want to make any changes like that, you just want to leave it the way it is because it's worked really good with regular lumber. Let me just show you this. This thing's about 4.5 feet long. Let's suppose that I wanted to cut this into something smaller, 2-inch pieces. I can fit that in here, and I can use my dog to stop that. But let's say I needed to pick up on one end, so I moved it up here, so I could use the toe board. I have no way of fastening this, because when I fasten it with this is going to pull this way, okay? So that means we have to have something different, a different type of a setup. And I'm going to be showing you that in a couple of minutes. So anyway, a 4-footer will work wherever the dogs are, okay? All you got to do is put the 4-footer, 5-footer, 6-footer, 7-footer, put it wherever the dogs are and you can cut. There's no reason why you have to keep going all the way back up to the end of the machine to do your cutting. All you're doing is wearing out the path up there. So why not give the machine an exercise to do the whole job, you know, by running it back and forth. There's a lot of times when I have my table close here and it's full of wood and you don't want to move it or can't move it, that I'll work down at this end with an 8-footer. But either way, the sawmill cuts anything from 4 foot up. All right, so let me talk about something that's, say, maybe 3 foot. Okay, so now let's talk about this problem. Now, we have something here. Let's say we have a log. It doesn't matter what it is. This is a piece of a log. It's split a little bit. I don't really need it for anything. I was hoping to use it as a seat, but I don't like the split that's in there. It's 19 inches in diameter. Okay, so how can you cut something that's 19 inches in diameter? Okay, you got 2 problems. Number 1 is you have to be able to set what you're going to cut on something, and then you've got to be able to keep it from coming this way when the saw blade hits it. So here's what I did with this. All I did was figure out, and wherever the stop is, I need 4-foot pieces of wood. So I have 3 4-footers here. I put 3 of them down. You could use anything. It could be a 2x4s you could lay down, 4x4s, whatever. It doesn't matter as long as it's 1 inch or more. Okay, you want it to be 1 inch or more so that you have some room for your blade. So these are 4 inches. It's just some pieces I had laying over there that I'm going to use to stack the wood. So I have these boards, they're tight. They're screwed against with the dog. They're put against the stops to hold them in place. So then all I want to do then is I want to cut this, okay? And I'm not sure exactly what to do with it, let's suppose. Okay, so there's a number of things you can do. Number 1, if you're going to split this in half, let me just see how high this is. This thing's roughly 5 inches high. So let's say I want to take 1 inch off of this thing, you know, just for the sake of talking. Oh, maybe say 2.5 inches or 1.5 inches. Okay, so I want to cut it at 3.5 inches. So you want to make sure that it's going to lay still. That side's not too still. Here, this is a lot better right here like this. Okay, so that's laying still. Now if I bring the sawmill down to that, if I bring the sawmill down to this will help me to know everything I need to know about whether I can cut this or not. Whether I'm clear on this side and I'm going to be clear on the opposite side. Now you see I have to open up the throat a little bit to be able to get over top of this log here. Okay, so that'll give me enough to get over top of that. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to hold this. You could, if you wanted to, drill straight down through with maybe 2 3-inch screws, drill holes down in there with the top of the screw further down than where you want to be able to do your cutting, and then cut through that. But then you're going to have 2 holes in the wood that you may not want. So let me just show you what you can do with this. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Now for one thing, the easiest way that I think would be to nail it on, but nails are tough going into hardwood. So there's a 3-inch drywall screw. So I'm going to put a screw in here as far out as I can. To hold that down. I'm going to put it on both sides and then on the opposite side. Just so you can see that. I want to make sure I'm running through just the wood, not just the bark. Okay, so the thing that's holding the wood down there now is the screws. All right. The dogs are holding the other pieces to the sawmill. So let's see how this works. You got to give me a minute to start the saw. Now you have got to be careful here when you're cutting it, because if the wood pulls out of the screws, it's going to bend the blade, so you want to be careful with it. Okay, you can see how nice that cut came out there. Now that's one way you can cut it. Okay guys, so you saw how that came out there. Now, This was originally cut with a chainsaw, this piece. So when I look across it there, it's pretty straight now because of the sawmill. But, you know, this is too thin to use for anything I need. But maybe I could use that, I don't know. But the point is I'm not talking so much about what you're getting from the cut. I'm showing you how to get the cut, okay? Now, let me just take some of this off of here because it doesn't seem like it wants to stay on. Okay, now another way of doing this, a guy came here to me one day and he says to me, I have this really thick piece of maple and I want to cut it into a guitar body. Can you cut it? So he brought it over, and what you see here is how I cut it. The only difference was instead of having 3 boards on the bottom, I actually had a log on the mill that was cut halfway through that he had, when he pulled in, that's what I had on the mill. I didn't even take it off. I just took the piece of maple that he had, and what I did was, so you know, is you want to cut a little bit on an angle here. You can do it with a square or you can do it with your table saw. Cut a little bit of an angle so when you push against that, it's tight. So what I did was I had one short piece over there, another short piece over here, and then I had 2 pieces on this side. So I put them in and I screwed them down to the body here, but they were tight against the maple. Now, in order to make sure they're tight, if you want to put some finishing nails in here, you know, and clip the end off, just so you can make sure they're into the wood there good, it's not going to hurt it. But I ended up cutting a 2-inch piece. Let's see, I cut a 1-inch piece off of a 3-inch piece, so he had a 2-inch piece left, I believe it was. But either way, it was a piece of maple, shaped kind of like a guitar body. Not a whole lot different than this, but you know, the sides were a little fancier. But the point is that that's how I cut it. And this works pretty well. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way you can cut it. There's a lot of smart guys out there that can come up with all kind of ways to do this. I'm trying to work with what I have on hand. I just picked these up out of my kindling bin over there, and these 4x4s, you know, if you've been watching my channel, I cut them yesterday. So, like I say, there's always a way to get things done, and this is one way to do it. Now, if you had some boards on here, let me just show you this. Let's say you had a smaller piece of wood that you wanted to cut. What you could do is, if you had some more 4x4s, you could put the 4x4s on here until you're the width of this apart, and then you can, you know, put this more. You want the center of this to be right at the dog if you can get it. So then you can move this down, and then you could actually push that in to a 2x4 that would be against the stops. So let me just show you what I'm talking about here. So in other words, you would have the stops up. The one board there is sticking up. But you would have the stops all the way up, and you could put a 2x4 against this up a little bit high to hold that. Now you got to do your thinking, like you can't have this too high that the saw is going to hit it or anything like that, so you have to be careful. But this is one way. Now it's not the only way I've used. I'm trying to show somebody how to do this who has nothing to work with. Okay? So I'm working with 4x4s. If you can't cut 4x4s with your saw, then you've got some kind of problems going on. I'm taking my screws back out. I can't find that one. There. way the sun's shining here, it's goofing my eyes up. I can't really see what I was doing there. But anyway, there it is. Well, that one's going to be a hard one to get out. But anyway, that's one way of cutting the piece. Okay, I can get that screw out of there with a pair of pliers or something if I can't get it out with the drill. So that may help you if you're you know, trying to figure out how to make a cut on something. That's one way to do it. And whatever you do, somebody had made a comment the other day, it must have been a wise guy, trying to say that you don't have to dog all of your cants. Let me tell you something. You could have a cant on there 12 by 12, 16 foot long, for as heavy as that is, and if that saw grabs a hold of it the wrong way, it's going to twist it over onto the saw head. You don't want that, so make sure everything is somehow fastened. Okay? So then I showed you that way, and I showed you about putting the strips against it. So if you're cutting something that's square, it's fairly easy to, you know, put something on there against the square wood, and all four sides if you can. If you can't, then put it on two sides at least. But make sure that you either cut this on an angle or put some kind of something in there, some tacks or nails, finishing nails, that they can tap into the wood to make sure it's going to hold it good. So that's all I'm saying about how you do that. So that's one way how to cut that. And I've done this a whole bunch of times and it seems to work pretty good. One of the problems with this is you got to have enough wood on here, like maybe a 2 by 12 or you know, something that doesn't even have to be, could be wider. You could put any kind of wide piece on there to hold the board. Plywood's usually not going to be sturdy enough, it's going to move, so you're better off with some kind of a plank, 2 by 12, especially for this 4-foot span here between the bunk rails. I'd say a 2 by 12, a 2 by 12 4 foot long would probably be the least that you'd want to use. But yeah, that's one way of cutting that. And you can see that, like I say, that it cut good. Alright guys, so that's it for today. That's all. I just wanted to show you that. I want to do some cutting, but I'm not really ready to. And they're calling for snow for the next 3 days, which I don't know what that means, because it comes, it goes, and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, have a good one.